Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a comprehensive blueprint on exactly how to build, scale, and most importantly, protect a successful organization. Because let's be real, whether you're leading a massive enterprise, guiding a nonprofit, or just building a startup from the ground up right now, there are fundamental laws of organizational physics that you simply cannot ignore. We're going to pull from some absolutely incredible source materials today, bringing together insights from Amazon's executive playbook and foundational strategic planning models to give you a crystal clear, actionable path forward.
So here's our roadmap for today's masterclass. We'll start with the thread of day 2, then move to the power of clear vision, followed by the strategic planning blueprint. After that, we'll talk about cultivating day 1 culture, and finally wrap up with high-velocity decision-making. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The threat of day 2. We absolutely have to start by addressing the invisible, creeping danger that threatens every single successful business as it scales.
So what actually happens when a booming organization stops innovating? It's a really critical question. Because as an organization grows, this natural, highly dangerous tendency starts to emerge. You start adjusting your approach to manage the sheer scale of the operation, right? But in doing so, your decision-making slows down. The company becomes a lot less agile. And worst of all, you actually start moving further and further away from the customer, rotating your focus inward toward bureaucratic processes instead of external innovation. It doesn't happen overnight either. It creeps in, slowly transforming you from a scrappy innovator into a bureaucratic dinosaur.
Jeff Bezos actually hit the nail on the head with this in his 2016 shareholder letter. He wrote this specifically to ensure his trillion-dollar behemoth was still acting like a hungry startup operating out of a garage. When asked what day 2 looks like, his answer was just chilling. Stasis, irrelevance, excruciating, painful decline, death. Avoiding this day 2 mentality takes absolute, unwavering vigilance. You have to actively fight the practices that kill your ability to rapidly innovate. So how exactly do we fight it?
That brings us to Section 2, the power of clear vision. The absolute best first antidote to that dreaded day 2 decline is establishing a powerful, unifying North Star.
Think of a vision as your ultimate destination, usually looking about 5 to 10 years out. Now, a clear vision is not just about economic outcomes or hitting profit margins. It describes what you want your organization to look like in ideal terms. It acts as a framework that attracts the right talent and simplifies literally every strategic decision you make. Once you have this clarity, it becomes a filter. You can recruit people who resonate deeply with your purpose, which massively boosts motivation because your team can see a direct connection between the company's goals and their own personal aspirations.
But we do have to separate vision from mission here. While your vision is your future destination, your mission is your everyday, forever purpose. It dictates how you operate on a Tuesday afternoon. It answers the fundamental questions. What do we do? Who do we do it for? How do we do it differently or better than anyone else out there? And ultimately, why do we do it? Basically, your mission is the engine running today, while your vision is the horizon you're driving toward.
And to bridge the gap between that everyday mission and your massive 10-year vision, you need goals. These are broad statements of what the organization hopes to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years, completely focused on qualitative outcomes and results. If you don't lay down these medium-term stepping stones, honestly, your 10-year vision is just a pipe dream.
Moving to Section 3, the strategic planning blueprint. Okay, so we know where we want to go, but how do we actually build the map to get there?
Well, before you even think about writing out your strategies, leaders absolutely must conduct a strategic assessment. This is a reality check to identify the critical issues challenging business as usual. First, you do an external assessment. What political, economic, or tech trends out there could be huge opportunities or massive threats over the next decade? Just think about how streaming was a tidal wave that destroyed brick-and-mortar video stores. Second, an internal assessment. Take a brutally honest look at your strengths. Maybe you have amazing facilities, and your weaknesses, like outdated software. And third, a market assessment. How are the needs of your customers actually changing? You simply can't plan a route without knowing the terrain.
The time frame for all of this cascades perfectly from your long-term North Star right down to immediate action. Your vision sits out there at the 5 to 10 year mark. Your goals are closer at 3 to 5 years. Then come your strategies, the major approaches you'll use to hit those goals, operating on a 1 to 5 year timeline. And finally, objectives. These are the specific, concrete, measurable actions you're going to knock out within a single year.
Let's ground this in the real world for a second. Say your 3-year goal is to expand your funding base to support some new programs. How are you going to do it?
Well, your strategy over the next few years might be to generate more revenue from specific departments or massively increase corporate giving. And then your objective for this current year is the exact dollar amount that specific department needs to generate by December 31st. This level of clarity is exactly how you prevent your team from burning time and resources on low-impact activities.
Section 4. Cultivating Day 1 Culture. Because honestly, the most brilliant strategic plan in the world will fail completely without the right cultural engine to execute it.
The difference between these two mindsets is undeniable. A Day 1 culture stays super agile. It protects fragile new ideas, it experiments patiently, and it fully embraces failure as just a natural, expected part of innovation. A Day 2 company, on the other hand, it gets totally paralyzed by deep layers of management. It fears failure, relies heavily on rigid processes instead of real outcomes, and requires consensus for absolutely everything, which, let's be honest, is usually just a fancy way of saying death by 1,000 meetings.
At the absolute bedrock of a Day 1 culture is a relentless, literal obsession with the customer. Leaders here do not invent in a vacuum. They work backward from customer pain points. Take Amazon Web Services, for example. Roughly 90% of the features they build come directly from listening to what customers explicitly need. And that other 10%, that comes from being so incredibly close to the customer that they can invent on their behalf before the customer even knows how to articulate the problem.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, high-velocity decision-making. To maintain that nimble startup energy as you get bigger, you have to fundamentally rewire how your organization makes decisions.
One of the best hacks for this is the 2-pizza team. By keeping autonomous teams small enough that they can be fed by just 2 pizzas, so generally 10 people or fewer, you completely eliminate matrix bureaucracy. Literally, if it takes more than 2 large pizzas to feed the room, your team is too big, period. This pushes high-velocity decision-making all the way down to the people actually interacting with the customer, freeing them up to rapidly test and iterate.
Here is a highly practical rule of thumb for you. If you are waiting until you have 90% or more of the data to make a choice, you are moving way too slowly. You want to encourage your teams to act decisively when they have about 70% of the information they wish they had. In a Day 1 culture, speed is a massive competitive advantage.
But wait, how do you move that fast without blowing the whole company up? You have to start thinking of risk in terms of one-way versus two-way doors. A one-way door is a decision with massive, permanent consequences, like, say, building a billion-dollar data center. That absolutely requires deep analysis. But a two-way door has limited, reversible consequences, like A/B testing a new button on your website. You've got to realize that the vast majority of choices are easily reversible two-way doors. You can walk through them quickly, see what happens, and just turn around if it was a mistake. Lower the cost of failure, and you instantly increase the speed of innovation.
So, to summarize this operational playbook for speed, first, identify those reversible two-way doors and run through them. Second, move quickly with partial data, embrace that 70% rule. And third, practice a concept called disagree and commit. It is perfectly fine, even encouraged, for people on your team to debate and disagree during the discussion phase. But once a decision is made, everyone must completely commit to the action. It saves a staggering amount of time compared to trying to endlessly convince every single person to reach total consensus.
So I want to leave you with a real gut check question as we wrap up this explainer. Look at your own team, your own business, or your nonprofit. Look at your strategic blueprint in your daily culture. Are you fiercely guarding your vision, obsessing over your customer, and moving with agility through two-way doors? Or has the bureaucracy, the fear of failure, and the stagnation of Day 2 already begun to creep in? Ultimately, the choice is yours. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep building for Day 1.